All right. Well, I have 1:30 and I want to respect everyone's time. So I'm going to go ahead and for those who might not know me, my name is Nancy Starr Cassidy. I am a 31 plus and I have every leadership opportunity that there is in that. In my real life, I am a retiree. I worked at Salt River Project for over 30 years, and I was the manager of learning technology, which is within the HR team. We implemented learning programs throughout the corporation. So many people might be asking, so why is Nancy teaching us on dynamic team leadership? And let me just share with you that I was incredibly fortunate through both my Toastmasters leading experience as well as my career that I have never had trouble recruiting people for my teams. People have wanted to be on my teams. I'm not saying all people want to be on my teams, but a lot of people wanted to be on my teams. So I've never had a real challenge in being able to bring people to the team and make people want to stay and do the work that we're doing. And that's whether in a paid situation or a volunteer situation. So I am here for the next few minutes to share what are the most important lessons that I have learned in my career. One of the most important lessons that I've learned is that you can attend all kinds of seminars. There are Stephen Covey, John Maxwell. Let's just start listing the names of all the amazing people who can provide you with tips and lessons and techniques for excellent leadership, excellent team building. And let me tell you a universal truth about them. They don't usually work. And the reason that they don't usually work is that you can't go, hey, I just attended a webinar by Nancy Starr Cassidy. I learned all about creating a dynamic team. So team, tomorrow, we're all going to be dynamic and we're going to work together because I'm going to implement Nancy's lessons. It doesn't work that way, whether it's Nancy's lessons, John Maxwell's lessons. These are tidbits of information that you can put in your toolbox. But the reality is building a dynamic team has got to be organic. It has to happen without you saying, hey, we're going to make it happen. So let's talk about the tools that I use. And I've got 3 simple tips to help you garner all of your lessons that you've learned about team building and leadership and being able to implement those in the real world. All right, so we're going to be talking about what does it take to create a dynamic team. And this is my first question for you. Which does your current team look like? And for those of you that are Toastmasters, you can envision your Toastmaster volunteer team. For those of you that are working, you can think about your team at work. But let's take a look at these 2 pictures. Which does your current team look like? I want to start you thinking about also, while we're talking and getting ready to do some discussion, what was the best or most dynamic team you've ever been part of? And it could be something temporary, again, something work, something in the Toastmasters realm. But I want you to be thinking about how this applies to those teams and whether or not these factors were part of what your experience was. One of the things that struck me at a very young age was I saw a very similar poll to this particular one. Why people change jobs. And a universal truth is that 75% of the people change the jobs because their bosses were not people they wanted to work for. This also strikes truth for those of you that are Toastmasters as to why people leave your club. They leave the club, doesn't matter what they said at their exit interview, because they're always going to tell you something that's not going to hurt your feelings. Unless they're mad at you, then they'll tell you the truth. But they'll tell you that it's a work conflict or family issues or some other priorities. But the reality is they're leaving because the leadership is not in alignment with what they're expecting from the experience. So it's important to me to know that the leaders, whether informal or formal, have a major impact as to whether people want to join you or whether they leave you. So these are important tips to take home with you today. So these are my 3 tips that we're going to be sharing. We're going to talk about and focus on the importance of importance, the importance of expectations, and the importance of people. So if you haven't already picked up on the word important, then you may hear it a time or two throughout the rest of this conversation. So let's begin with the importance of importance. How do you know what is important? This is a question that is universal about whatever experience you're having. If you're trying to work together as a team, are you sure that everybody on the team understands what is important? And this is where I want you to think about the team that is really working well, or perhaps one that's not well. For many organizations, importance is their mission or their vision, their core values. It could be the culture of the group or the company or the team, the organization. Perhaps the most important thing is the outcome. What is it that you want to achieve? Or even in some cases, and especially some companies, the following the procedures, the protocols, and the policies is most important. But the question is, how do you know what is important? And so this is where I'm going to ask those of you that are with us to turn on your microphones. And I'd love to hear from you thinking about either the most functional or even the most dysfunctional team. How do you know what's most important? And Trish, since I can't see my screen, if you could help me identify those that would like to speak.
Hi, Nancy. We've had a couple of additions to the group. I'm not seeing anyone with any questions in the chat, and it doesn't appear that everybody has audio on either, or audio and visual.
Okay, well, if you don't want to activate your audio, please feel free to share an example or in the chat, or request to activate your audio at the top of the screen, and then that way you can provide some input or feedback.
Okay, I think Jim was requesting access.
Okay.
Hi, Jim.
Let me do this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I've been taking notes, so I think how do I know what is important? It's from our team lead, who then stresses the importance of a deadline, of basically telling the team that, hey, we have a deadline in 3 months that we have to deliver a product to the customer. So it's the continuous reminder of a deadline. So that's how we know that something's important.
Great. So it's verbal, and I'm assuming probably always in writing as well, that those messages are reinforced to you and the team that these deadlines are really critical to the success of the team. So that's great. Does anyone else have an example?
On that, like the deadlines, but the goals. So, I mean, it kind of comes hand in hand, like, you know, when you want to achieve certain things.
Excellent. Yes. So let me give you a couple of examples of groups that help me understand what's important. So in the world of Toastmasters, for those of you that have ever participated in a district-wide event for the state of Arizona District 3, one of the key factors is that every district council business meeting or the district executive committee business meeting always begins with the reading of the mission. So the leader, usually our district director, is always reminding all of the attendees that what is the most important thing? It's our district mission, the purpose of why we're here. It helps frame the context for our behavior during that meeting, is that everything should be contributing towards that goal. So it's a very simple and easy way for all of us to be reminded about what's important. So let me go to my next screen. This may be a somewhat familiar graph to you, and I simplified it. But when Dwight Eisenhower was our president, he enacted a principle and is actually given credit for saying the quote that what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. In our daily lives, we are bombarded by urgent matters. And as demonstrated in this grid, there are crises, there are things that happen to us in our organization and our teams that really are both important and urgent. And of course, those need to be addressed. But where we should be spending a lot of our time is the things that are important but not urgent, and that's goals and planning. What typically happens is that bottom line, which is the not important grid, and those are the daily interruptions and the distractions. And especially in our volunteer organization, I see so many of our leaders get derailed because they're focusing too much on the other three grids and not the ones that is working towards goals and planning. So what that's telling me is they're not remembering to put the importance on the important. So we're very aware that these other distractions, interruptions, and crises occur. But as a leader, we have to remind ourselves and our teams constantly about what's important. We shouldn't just assume everyone has read the goals and missions and the objectives. We as the leaders are the ones that need to make sure that we're bringing this information back to our team. So this is the first of Nancy's nuggets. The most important lesson I learned is that if you want them to think that it's important, that you need to act like it's important. And I'm going to give credit to a past international president of Toastmasters, Bob Barnhill, for planting this seed many, many, many years ago, actually about 25 years to be precise. I was at a conference, and as a matter of fact, at the time I was in charge of the conference, and I was really proud of the work we had done. Bob, having an international president visit your conference is a big deal. So Bob was taking a few moments during a quiet time to compliment me on that. But he asked me, he goes, so what's the most important thing about this whole experience? And I said, well, I'm not sure I know what you mean. He goes, exactly. He goes, nowhere in this conference are you telling me what's important to you. Well, that really was an eye-opener, and we began a very sincere and intense discussion about what's important. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, as a district leader, I should be celebrating and focusing on distinguished clubs, recognizing those people for what they've done, not just trying to put on a fun and interesting conference. And it really changed my entire view of how to lead teams, not just in Toastmasters, but also back in the real world. So from that point, it's any team that I'm on, I need to know what's important. If I'm a participant, I'm going to ask this question. What is the goal that we're trying to achieve? How are you going to measure that? What's the most important thing about the work we're about to do? Because if everybody's not in agreement about what's important, we're going to get distracted. So that's why when I ask you, what's important? What's the most important thing we need to know? This is why I ask that. Because if we're not focusing on what's important, we're not going to easily meet our goals. And we're certainly going to be spending a lot of time and frustration about things that are not contributing towards what's important. Do I have any questions about the importance of importance?
Nancy, there are no questions in the chat.
All right. Anyone have a comment to share about, does this change your view about thinking about in your team how we can determine what's most important?
It definitely made me get a light bulb moment go off when you said that about the conference, when you're like, what's the most important? So I just feel like that's the light bulb moment that's gone off for me to make sure I take that into now everything that I do in the future.
Well, wonderful. So woot woot for you. As I said, it was truly that simple complex component or idea dramatically changed my life, because I realized focus was not my strength. And what I want to share with you in the next few steps is how can we continue on this thought of importance without, again, in a more practical and organic way with your teams. So I'm going to move on to the next point, which is the importance of expectations. Because a lot of team dysfunction happens simply because different people have different expectations. So number one, if we all know what's important, that automatically starts adding more alignment for your team. But what I have been really surprised by is how many teams assume expectations are being met. So before anything else, I was reading an article from Hubstaff, and it said, before anything else, ask yourself, do you know what you're expecting from your team? Because that's the most frustrating thing for me as a team member, is I'm really good at meeting expectations, hopefully exceeding them, but I'm really good at meeting them. So if you set the expectations, well, that's what I'm going to work for. If I have to figure out the expectations myself, well, I'm going to probably miss the mark. So how are we ensuring that people understand and know expectations? Now, again, expectations is sort of generic. It can cover a lot of different categories. So, for example, do you have expectations about priorities? Do you have expectations about the level of customer service that you provide? Well, what does that look like? Does that mean you respond within nanoseconds, within 24 hours? Again, it depends on the team and the business and the context. But you have to ask yourself, is everyone operating under the same expectations? This comes to some really core things about your team, which is I've been very fortunate that the people that naturally are attracted to my team or the teams that I go on, I, again, organically share a lot of values. I share honesty and trust. And when I don't have that honesty and trust, then those are core things that you have to have. But again, is that an expectation? I've been on teams where core and on those core values are not part of the expectations of the team. So understanding the culture, but again, being able to communicate that is very, very important. I read a recent article by Jeff Bezos, and he was referencing that the fact that Amazon is so successful because they were able to really set high standards. Now, you can't just come into your team and say, okay, today we're going to have high standards. It has to happen organically. But what I did find out is that people are very good. I love this quote. People are very good at learning high standards simply through exposure. High standards are contagious. Bring a new person in on a high standard teams, and they will quickly adapt. The opposite is also true. If low standards prevail, those too will quickly spread. I'm going to give you an example without naming names. Many years ago, early in my career, I worked for the federal government. And I really liked the people, and I actually really liked the job. However, I kept getting called into the supervisor's office for going a little beyond my job duties. That I was, because I had bandwidth, I wanted to help and add value. And I actually kept getting told to stop doing that. So they wanted me to work slower and do less so that I fit into the expectations of the team. Now, let's just say I didn't last there long because that's not me. I can't sit still. I love to learn. I love to understand. I love to add value and improve processes. And so the federal government was just not for me. Now, I'm hoping the federal government has evolved since then. And if any of you work for the federal government, I'm certainly not putting them down. Just that particular agency and that particular department, I knew I could not meet those expectations. Now, to give you a Toastmasters example, I chartered a club along with some other very wonderful, high-quality volunteers, and we let it be known that it was not acceptable for this new club to achieve anything less than all 10 goals on the Distinguished Club program. And as a matter of fact, we didn't realize that the new president at the time misunderstood and thought that if she didn't get all 10 goals, that we would lose the charter of the club. Well, we didn't want to scare her that bad, and I felt a little bit about that, maybe been a little too exuberant about setting high standards. But guess what? Here, 20 years later, that club has never failed to achieve President's Distinguished status, because that's the expectation. The expectation was set, and after those of us that are long gone have left, that expectation continues. So don't be afraid of setting high standards. I hate it when people start dumbing standards down because they don't want to disappoint people. People will rise to your expectations. So folks, as leaders, set them and communicate them. Communicate clearly and frequently, because you're not going to be able to make progress without communication, and especially with each other. It's where you should begin when setting expectations with your team. So being able to talk about this, reminding them frequently how important it is. Because remember, what's important to the team. So we're going to go to Nancy's second nugget, which may look very familiar. If you want them to think it's important, then you need to talk like it's important. So again, how do you do this? Well, let me share with you one way of doing that. When I worked at SRP, their number one commitment was safety. And we implemented hundreds of safety trainings. And we had tailgates for all of the people that were out in the field. We really focused and communicated on how important it was for safety. Now, for those of us that were office workers, it was a little more challenging to figure out how we as employees could be part of the safety culture of our organization. So what ended up happening is that every meeting we had, whether it was virtual, whether it was one-on-one, whether it was a regular sit down in a room meeting, all began with a safety minute. So the safety minute could be an observation that someone saw of an unsafe act. They could talk about a personal experience of where they stopped to think about what they were doing and to do it in a more safe manner. They had education items where they would bring up tips for car maintenance to make sure things are safety. In other words, it didn't matter what it was safety related. It was just that every moment started with a safety minute. So we knew that it was important. We reinforced it and we talked about it a lot so that everyone knew the expectations were that we were part of a safety culture. We also at SRP were very customer centric. So we started including not only a safety minute, but a customer service minute. And we talked about, even if we didn't interact directly with our external customers, we talked about how we reacted and or opportunities for providing customers within our own team and the teams that we interacted with. And that customer service moment will come back at a little bit later in this presentation. So before I move on, we're talking about the importance of expectations. Do we have anyone that wants to share a story or have questions about the importance of expectations?
I'll just share. I'm a member of a club where Nancy has set the president's distinguished expectation. Woe be any club president that fails to meet president's distinguished. You will incur the wrath of Nancy.
But it's great because I don't ever have to say anything because it's the expectation. And the officers do talk about it. So thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing nothing, let's move on to the next and final point, which is the importance of people. Sometimes I'd love to be in a team just by myself, but the reality is a team does make things happen. So how do you get to have people want to be on your team. And by that, I mean want as in coming to your team or staying on your team. And what it really comes down for me is appreciating each member's strengths, being willing to listen and to help, and reminding the people on the team how important they are to the team. So appreciation, being willing to listen and help, and reminding them of their importance are the ways that you get people to want to be on your team. Now, this is something that you would think would be organic, generic, intuitive to everyone, but it's not. I used to have a really bad habit of judging people as to whether or not they were sort of on my playing level. People that might seem to be more shy or more introverted or a little bit slower to jump in on board. And it took me a very long time and a very painful lesson for me to understand that everyone, truly everyone, brings something to the table. And a lot of times you may have blinders on to being able to see what their strengths are. I'm a huge fan of Marcus Buckingham, and I know back in the early 2000s, and it's still available to you, where you can take the strengths assessment to get an idea of what your strength is. It took me a long time to understand that a strength is not just what you're good at, and a weakness is not just what you're bad at. But a strength is what is an activity that strengthens you, that it draws you in, it makes time fly while you're doing it, and it makes you really feel strong. So an example is that I'm very good at numbers. And I'm often asked to serve in the capacity of treasurer, or as some of you know, I really love to get into the district treasury reports and stuff to see what's going on. And I'm good at it, but it's not a strength. It's actually a tedium, but it's something I know that has to be done, so I have to do it. And it's intuitive to me, and I just get it done, but I don't like doing it. That's not what rocks my boat. I'm a much more creative person. So have me start working on PowerPoints and that sort of thing, and I get all excited and be able to create something out of nothing. And that's when time flies. I love working with people. Much rather talk to people than I would be looking at a spreadsheet or even a PowerPoint. So you have to know what people's strengths are, because you can't make everyone on your team all be strong at the same thing. It won't work. So what you have to do is find what motivates someone, and you use that as a rewards opportunity. So what I found, this worked especially well on my team at SRP, my final group that I had, and they were amazing. And we had some people that were just really good at creating content and product, but they were horrible at the part of interviewing the client and being able to figure out what was actually needed and develop a concept for a product going forward. But we had another person who was really good at that part and horrible at creating the actual product. So it took a while for us to figure out that instead of having them each work on their own project, is that we always bundled them. And together as a team, they were amazing. They produced quality content. It just improved productivity. And we started seeing those kinds of partnerships where our individuals, I didn't have to recognize it. The individuals on our team recognized those people that they were best partnering with. And it was an amazing and organic process. So again, sometimes you as a manager can't make it happen, but you have to make the opportunity for people to recognize the strengths that the other people have. And where they have weaknesses, that you have the opportunity to say, how as a team can we solve for this? Because it still has to get done. But maybe how we're approaching that particular thing, how that individual needs assistance with that part, is what we can do to work together and make things happen. It was so enlightening when we started recognizing that instead of people feeling resenting because someone isn't doing this part well, we started solving for that. And again, my team was bringing me solutions, not just me coming up with those solutions. So that's all part of that organic, setting the expectations, allowing people to be able to recognize those strengths, is just something that really helped change the dynamic of the team. And this went along with it. It's important that everyone felt part of the team. The team should be willing to work with each other. And the key thing is that let them know that if any of them needs help, you and everyone else will be more than happy to lend a hand. Again, the part of the team that I loved is that I would have people knock on the door and say, you know, I can tell that so-and-so is really stressed and frustrated at this part of the project. Is it all right if I pause what I'm doing and help pitch in over there to help get past this hurdle? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Please, you're empowered. Please do that. And it just warmed my soul to see that, how they were willing to just look around, recognize that one of their teammates was struggling and that they felt empowered to help solve the problem. So again, who wouldn't want to be part of that team? I just love them. So everyone was contributing for that team-wide success. So here's another important thing. It is so important to say it. And what do I mean by it? That it is how much you appreciate whatever it is they're doing. So I was fortunate that I was in a team where we were physically close together, and at least a couple of times a day would just walk around to the group. And especially if somebody solved a problem or something happened that was really positive, I would just look them in the face and say, dang, have I told you lately how much I love having you as part of this team? Or have I told you lately how much I love how you solve problems? You know, so it just needs to be something spontaneous. And it can be said either individually or I try. It's me, my voice carries, you know, I would say it publicly. But the people on my team, and it didn't matter if they were interns or if they were 30-year veterans of the group, they all perked up when I would just make a simple statement of appreciation. And again, it has to be organic. It has to be spontaneous, it has to be immediate, it has to be sincere, it has to be, the level of enthusiasm can be adjusted to your personal style. But just telling someone, dang, I am so happy to be on this team. Dang, I'm so happy to see that this is happening, you know, just that kind of a constant reminder, verbally telling people that you see what they're doing, that you appreciate it, really, really keeps the team motivated, makes them feel part of the group, makes them want to be with you. It makes them say, okay, I'll do it, when I have to ask them to do something they don't want to do. And it works every time. So you let them have their moment in the sun, and get through the tough times together.
And Nancy?
Yes.
I don't know if you can see my window.
I can't.
You're at the 10-minute warning because I love you. I need to communicate that to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And good thing is I'm close to being done. So, but I do want to, again, share how important it is for you to verbalize what it is, and why they're important. So again, Nancy's nugget: if you want them to think they are important, then you need to act like they are important. Remember earlier when I was talking about how at SRP we had the safety minute and the customer service minute? Well, again, what I loved about the customer service minute is that it often was an opportunity for the team members to start telling them of the amazing customer service that they supplied to each other. So it became a moment where they would actually talk about how important that person was to the team and the success for that person to be able to meet their goal with the help of the other team members. Again, this happened organically. I didn't lead it. It just started happening that they said if they didn't have an external customer minute, that they started talking about their appreciation for the specific things that their team members did to help them. So it's not just you as a leader that have to talk about making each of the other team members feel important. It's finding an opportunity to be able to help others recognize the importance of the other people on the team. I'm actually concluding my formal part of my presentation. I just want to remind you that to create a successful and dynamic team, if you can focus on what's important, the importance of importance, the importance of expectations, and the importance of people, you too will develop organically a dynamic team. And with that, I will stop sharing and be able to get back to the fair and the presenters. What questions or suggestions, feedback do you have on building dynamic teams?
Nancy, it's not exactly a question, but there was a comment made that I think we could possibly discuss here. DJ's made note that in some workplaces, needs are thought of as being weak, and we don't want to show that. If you're in that kind of environment, do you have any recommendations on how to address needs without coming across as being weak?
Again, that comes back down to the core assumption is that you have trust with your leader, if not with all the members of the team, but at least as that. And again, it's not so much as it, to me, coming across as honesty, as saying, here's where I am. I want to be here. I know you want me to be here. So what can we do to help me get to where we need to be together? Mm-hmm. So I think if you acknowledge it's not just help, I need help. If the conversation is, I recognize I'm not where I need to be because of these things. And so how can we help solve this gap? So if you're looking at it in that, reminding everyone this is the goal we want to get to, again, what's important? I know it's important that we be here. I want to be here, but in order for me to get here, this is what needs to happen. And so I think if you present it more in that way, then it helps, it shows the strength. It shows you, we're all in agreement. This is where I need to be and what I need to do. So in order for us to get there together, this is what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. It's a good idea. I was thinking of balancing it in some kind of risk reward.
And right. Yeah, exactly. So but again, it's about having that conversation and how whatever it is can be mutually benefit either to the team members or to the leader, the organization.
Jim, did you have something? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. This was a great session. As a reminder, I sometimes we forget about a lot of things, and it's just a reminder. I really liked your nuggets, and I took notes, but it's so important. And that's when I was district director. To me, it was so important about showing appreciation to all of our volunteers in our district. And also, I'm the type of person, as you may have already known, I'm always willing to help as well. And so if people see that you're willing to help, you're being authentic and you're genuine, so they know that they want to be on your team. And I just want to say thank you. It was a great reminder or refresher for me as well.
And Jim, I want to not only thank you for your comments, but having observed you as a leader, you do very effectively communicate that, and people are drawn to you as a leader, and they do want to be on your team because they do know they'll be appreciated, that they'll be directed, and that you are there for them when there are roadblocks and challenges. And so thank you for walking the talk and being a living example of what I'm talking about.
Very good. Thank you.
I want to share also that after all these years, Nancy, I don't know that I've told you recently, but when I was in a hostile situation at work and a lot of the team members were frustrated and ready to turn in their resignations, I took my play sheet straight from you and just started saying when I was talking to people, have I told you lately what a pleasure it is to work with you? And without meaning or intending to do that, I just wanted everybody to get at least one positive statement in the day. That has actually established me in the group now as someone who, when I ask, they do. It's just, that is something they go back and remember. And those people are still there. They did not resign. So I'm very happy to have helped salvage the team to some degree with a simple statement I learned from you. And you're at the 1 minute mark.
Thank you. And I do want to say thank you to those of you that are participating either within the video or listening in just via audio, that I appreciate your commitment to self-improvement. And I have every confidence that if you remember what is important, that you too will be able to see a significant change within your team's success. If you want to reach me, I will be available at Starr with 2 R's, Cassidy at gmail.com, or I will probably be hanging out. And for a few minutes, you feel free to send any notes or questions that you have.
Thank you, Nancy. That was a really great presentation. I really enjoyed that.
Great. Thank you, Amanda.
And say hello and goodbye to Leslie too. She was able to join, but not by audio.
Oh, great. Thanks, Leslie. Oh, I see Holland and DJ were here too.
Yeah. You had a very nice turnout. Kudos. Good job.
Great. Excellent. Let's see who's still here.
And Leslie would like to speak to you, Nancy.
Oh, yes, wonderful.
You might try using the networking feature, or you can definitely do a direct message to Nancy through the event.
Ah, here we go. Let's see. I'm still learning this this system. All right, Leslie, I see I have the opportunity to invite you to a video call. So I'm going to activate that, and I think whenever that's available that you can activate that, and then I can go to the private meeting room. This is awesome. So I will. All right, if there's no other questions, I will go ahead and pop over to that meeting room, and I will see the rest of you later. Thank you again, Trish and Amanda, for your assistance.
Hold on. Leslie's here.
Come on now.
Leslie's muted.
She's in. Okay, awesome. Hello.
Nancy, I'd like to ask you, because I'm now an independent health coach, how do I connect with the people on their level and how create a team of clients to be on my team? So I don't want to push them. I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to tell them. It's more sharing than caring.
Right.
Where I create influence, but not really. How do I create influence without giving them? I don't know how to say this, but how do I influence them to create health in their life? How do I do that? Help me there.
I know. So is your goal is this one-on-one that you're trying to create this energy, or is it in a group setting?
It's one-on-one, but and it's like you post stuff. How do you on Facebook? So I don't know how to do that now.
So here's a couple of ideas that are just coming to my mind, and trust me, Trish is equally experienced, and I'm sure Amanda is as well. But so one of the things you want to do is that consistency of message. So if you can concisely or begin each of your posts or communications with this message of what's your goal? Goal is that working together to create, health, something simple that says, this is sort of my mission, my most important thing. I want to work together to create something or help you achieve something without making it sound like commercial, if you will.
Yeah.
That it's just the simple truth. This is the simple truth of what I'm trying to do. And you begin with that in mind. And then people will get drawn to that and say, okay, because I want that too. So, I don't know if that's helping you focus on that or not.
Yeah, I start with that. So in my mind, I would say, I want to create health in your life. And by doing so, how can I help you? Is that correct? I don't know, but I'm new at this. So
And a lot of times you have to remember people don't necessarily know what it is that they really want,
Right.
or subconsciously they know what they want is actually a hard thing. Like if you were to ask me that, I know I have to, well, losing weight is hard. So if I tell you that I know I need to lose weight, then I'm automatically admitting it and have to do something about it now, and that's hard. Okay.
All right.
So what you might want to do is you might want to again ask for something simple. Ask for something simple that I can do.
Can I give you?
Yeah, but again, I'm just yeah.
Can I try
Trish, jump in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been so distracted since the events in DC.
Okay.
And you're building these relationships with people.
Mm-hmm.
When something like that happens, it doesn't have to be that drastic. But when there's something that occurs in everybody's life or something that's more common, if someone had just sent out, today, let's remember, be kind. That's it. Just something to give me something positive to hold on to and realize that staying in the moment isn't going to help get out of the moment, but getting into a better frame of mind will help get out of it. And so I don't know what level you're communicating on health-wise, but if maybe just, I know oftentimes, Nancy, you send out a positive note of the day, and reading that just changes my whole, perspective on how I'm going to approach the day. So I was thinking about what Nancy was just sharing. If I got some kind of reminder, doesn't a handful of carrots sound good today? I'm more likely to go grab a handful of carrots to munch on than a bag of chips. Now, because the image of the carrots has been put in my mind. So as I was listening to you and I was listening to Nancy, I was thinking maybe something like that. You're not trying to get more from them. To Nancy's point, you're just trying to find a common place to stand on, and something that will open them up to possibly making one more change in their life. Then you're only asking a little bit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going back.
And no, but I love that. I love that idea. And again, it's why I do my, I send out on Facebook every morning an inspirational quote of the day.
Okay.
I do it every day. And I am humbled by how many people say that makes such a difference. And on the few days where I get distracted and forget to post, I get notes from people going, Nancy, where's my quote? Like, oh, thank you. I forgot. I didn't follow my normal morning routine and do that. But again, maybe there's, health tip for the day. Maybe there's a little healthy recipe for the day. There's a lot of ideas like that. So Amanda, Amanda was waving goodbye. Okay. But, so those are some ways of sort of building that trust, building that, see, I'm not just trying to get something from you. We're working on this together. Here's a tip I found. If you have a health tip for me to share with my other clients, please share what works for you. So you start building that community that way. So that's a great idea, Trish.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nancy.
You bet.
Advisement.
Something to think about. So.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you so much for this session. I really appreciate it. Okay.
You bet. All right. Well, thank you again. And I'll be closing this session, and we will see you at another event.